Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Nerds of the North podcast. My name is Matt, host number one, and joining me today, as always, is host number two.
Nick, and before we go on, I have to say you're looking very fly today with that haircut, Matt.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I desperately needed a haircut. I'm sure at some point I might get comments on that in the future about like, man, our guy needs to get a haircut. But finally made it happen. Life's been happening, and so I'm feeling very fresh today, which is very nice. I'm like a gal from the salon, feeling real pretty. And also on that same vein, I like your earrings, sir. They're looking quite nice.
Thanks. Yeah. Yep, that's new. So
I know. Look at us. We're trendsetters, and by trendsetters, I mean we're following trends that have literally been done for millennia.
I was hanging out with this guy, and oh, sorry, this is an aside.
No.
And he's because he's a traditional guy. He's like, back in the 60s and before that, getting an earring, that one, that wasn't a thing that guys would do. It wasn't exactly like that, but that's what he said. And He's a conservative guy, and I'm like, well, 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, people were getting plenty of earrings probably then, or 2,000 years ago. I don't know. It's like, when do you want to start defining what is traditional and what's not?
Oh yeah, I mean, other cultures do such way more extreme forms of body modification to indicate, wealth, status, fashion, whatever,
Yeah. And I definitely, this is definitely a wealth thing. I want people to look at me and be like, that guy got some money.
Got some diamond studs in these years.
The other day, and again, we're off topic here, but this girl is like, she said that I look like I should drive a Tesla, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant. I think it's good.
You look like you should drive a Tesla.
I get all sorts of comments on my appearance, and I don't know why, but I do.
I tend to just get them on my voice usually. I guess my face is just secondary to when my voice comes out.
Yeah.
Which generally is totally fine with me.
You're more of a voice than a face, I would say.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I have a voice for radio and a face that matches. So so I think that's fair, right?
I don't think that's true, Matt. I don't think that's true. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, we're so off track. We're going to talk about random bullshit today, but we'll probably start off with random bullshit and then maybe move into Marvel a little bit more down the road, because I don't think there's anything like too horribly like groundbreaking or shattering that's happening in What If right now with Marvel, which is typically what we talk about. I guess the most recent episode does is going to bring all the narratives we've seen together in some meaningful way, which is really cool. But we'll get to that in a minute.
It would definitely appear that way.
Yeah, like previous to the episode starting, Nick and I were expunging about some things we've been watching and talking about and playing in terms of video games. And I know that I personally, in terms of video games, I play video games constantly. That is my main pastime outside of sleeping and eating and pooping.
Oh yeah, and yeah, pooping. There's a big one.
Right. Like that's got to be in most people's top three, I think.
Of things I do during a day, probably not.
Maybe something's wrong with me.
I spend a good, 4 hours a day pooping.
4 hours a day. But yeah, no, like I've been playing a tremendous amount of Hades. And I know that a lot of people have played a lot of Hades. It's an extremely popular game. Oh, hi, Hero. I started my journey on Hades months ago and was really into the game. But I was struggling a little bit with the difficulty of the game. And I kind of fell off a little bit. I had beaten the game a few times. For those unfamiliar, it's a roguelite. So the point is kind of you do a run, you want to complete your run by, doing having a successful run. I don't want to like give away spoilers or anything, but you do a successful run and then you do it all over again. So the whole point is kind of the loop through again. So it's very much like Enter the Gungeon.
And it's like a top-down game where you fight demons essentially.
Yeah, like it's an isometric point of view. So you're looking down upon the main character, whom is Zagreus, who is the son of Hades, and he's attempting to fight his way through the depths of hell up to the surface world, for a purpose of which I won't expunge upon too much. Um, but like I fell off because of the difficulty of the game. But it can be very challenging, especially for those unfamiliar with the genre. Very recently, I built my wife a PC so she could start getting into PC gaming because she saw what I was doing with some of the games and she really liked those and she wanted to give it a try herself. Built her PC, and her first game she wanted to try was Hades because they have this cool feature that like makes the game really approachable for people who like might not be as quick on the sticks. And it's called God mode, that like if you die, which you will do a lot in Hades naturally, but if you die, you get a little bump in damage resistance. And so every time you die, you get like 2%. So like if you're dying a lot, you're going to start getting further and further into the game, and it makes it much more playable for people whom, like my wife, she's not necessarily bad at video games, but like in terms of level of experience with things that require a lot of quick reflexes, that's not usually her jam. So the cool story of Hades ends up opening up a lot to her because she's able to actually like get through a run, and it's been really cool to watch her play through that. But yeah, once she started getting back into it, I got back into it. So I've just been playing it endlessly. Like I think I've done like 80 runs now in the game, and I've completed like probably like 18 actual runs through those attempts. But yeah, like it's a super cool game, a lot of really cool narrative, and it's spoon fed to you in a way that I really, really enjoy. I was telling Nick before the episode started, I've been rewatching House, and I feel like the way they feed you information in House is very much like how they feed you info in Hades. It's like most of the time is just you mashing buttons and playing the game, whereas like 10 minutes of it is just like actual story, and something that works really well for the style of game. I don't know. It's like it's just been super, super enjoyable.
Yeah, I like I said earlier, House is a show that number one, I have not watched. If anyone is curious, and I know there's many out there that are waiting to know who have watched that show. And no, I'm not going to watch it.
So. I don't blame you.
I'm just not really into the whole medical drama situation. I remember watching ER as a young lad with my mother, and that was George Clooney during his peak sexiness days. I think it's who did he play again? I can't remember. I just remember he was on that show.
I don't even know. I've never watched ER.
Oh, he dated the nurse, I believe, which was a big deal. And then he came back like several times when he left.
Sure.
Anyway, ER was actually legit a good show, but it's like all those medical dramas. It's like just crap happens every single week, and there's just these event episodes where half the cast like go through some traumatic event or someone dies. So by the end of the series, half the main characters have died traumatically in some way. There's been some sort of terrorist attack on whatever city they're living in. There's been a helicopter that's run into the building, or there's been like a mass I was gonna say pandemic. Well, obviously that's true now. But it's just it's completely it's insane. I think it's the same with like Grey's Anatomy.
Right.
But
I think that's the case with all those like medical drama shows, because if it were just normal doctors, like it's like, oh, well, I'm a doctor and I go to work every day and I check people's temperatures and give consultations, and then I go home to my
a lot of butt stuff. I do
Yeah,
a
right.
lot of other
Yeah.
stuff.
So
I
many things crammed in butts.
I don't
So
even like. I mean, I never really watched Scrubs either. I don't want to say I don't like it, but I've just never really watched it. Which
I mean, like
I know there's a lot of people that have.
my opinion on this is clearly tainted, like, or clearly skewed. I've watched both Scrubs and House all the way through at least once, and I really enjoy Scrubs because it's a lot like Futurama. I'd make that comparison. Like Futurama is like a really dumb show with some really sincere moments of emotion that get sprinkled in that like really make the show what it is. And I feel like Scrubs is exactly the same way. Like it's more realistic, or it's more relatable in that like it's not set in the year 3000, but like those moments of emotion really tie the characters together and make it what it is. House, on the other hand, is nothing like that. It's like most other medical dramas. And I've even started noticing a lot, like, I think it's just the age of the show at this point, but just like that soap opera lighting, that really soft, like fuzzy, almost looking like
Yeah.
halo that ends up on a lot of
I mean,
people.
that's like typical cable drama stuff.
Right. Yeah. And it's like I've been watching so much YouTube content for like the last, like, Jesus, like 2, 3 years. I just don't spend much time watching television. And like YouTube is just like more resolution, more pores. Like they just want you to see like every hair follicle on these people's faces. And so it's funny going back and watching this to where things are like so soft. There's not like a lot of detail in the people's faces, because at the time the technology just wasn't there. I couldn't even tell you like when House really was prominently on the air, but
Yeah. I think it was I'm gonna say the early 2000s, maybe
yeah.
something like 2010. And I think just the money that's in television these days is just
Mhm.
like shot up so fast, you know.
Mhm. No,
Um,
agreed.
there's so many prestige TV shows, which back then there really wasn't. You had like maybe stuff on HBO,
Mhm.
but that was about it, I think. Unless you want to consider Lost prestige television, which I would. But
Yeah, no, I had 100%, but like I think shows like Lost, I think are Lost, and I don't know, like I maybe even put House in that category, that really like kind of paved the way for where we are now. That like we're it feels like we're focused, like production studios, whether it be television or places like Netflix or HBO, Amazon, whomever, are working more on quality versus quantity.
mm,
Maybe Netflix isn't the best
I
example
was
of
gonna
that,
say not
because
Netflix, HBO definitely though. At
Netflix kind
least
of started there. They started from a place where it was like one, because like House of Cards, right? Like House of Cards was like Netflix's premiere show for a while there.
Netflix just is one of those things that they throw so much crap at the wall and hope something sticks,
See, that's what
which
they do now, is they
which
just
it
like
does. You know, there's some usually something that does stick, but
and some of the shows have been genuinely good. Like I can't name any.
Squid Game, Squid Game has been very good. I'm almost through episode 4 now, and would highly recommend.
Squid Game. I might need to look that up.
Oh, did I not talk to you about this one?
Hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, Squid Game is a South Korean drama, and
Sure.
it's about this group of people that are essentially coaxed into playing children's games, and if they fail at the game, then they get executed. But the winner will get some ungodly amount of money as a prize. And it's like a mixture of, I would say, the movie Parasite, that I think won the Best Picture award either, I think it was 2020 last year, and just like a random anime, Japanese anime,
Hmm.
kind of that sort of weird feeling
Sure.
that kind of feels like both. Um, anyway, I think what we were gonna say about Hades was that sort of weird like resetting that TV shows do a lot, at least a
Mhm.
lot of older TV shows, where basically after each episode it just resets and then it kind of starts all over again like nothing happened.
Yeah,
And
like a lot of sitcoms kind of feel like Groundhog Day almost in that regard. Like
yeah,
it's just like what wacky and wild thing are they going to focus on that day? But like it doesn't really feel like any of the episodes like really interconnect
yeah,
in a meaningful narrative. You just have these episodes that are like bookends on arcs.
yeah. Well, I think some series definitely play on that fact, like
Hmm.
The Good Place, I would say, plays on that fact, or that
Mhm.
that stereotype, or not stereotype, but just the way sitcoms are set up in general.
I guess I'd call that a trope.
Trope.
Yeah. Is like, yeah, no, I think The Good Place is a good example of that. Like, and I guess, I don't know, like, Good Place does a really good job of setting up that story and then really, like, I don't know, do I really want to, like, I guess, spoilery a little bit? Like, there's like an M. Night Shyamalan moment twist at some point in the show that really like
Isn't there several of them? Really?
yeah, I would agree. Yeah, there are several of them, but like the first one prepares you for like what might be happening down the road. Because I know that I went into Good Place completely blind. So when that first moment happened, I was like, oh wow, this is not what I was expecting because um I had some friends from Montana who suggested watching The Good Place, and I was like, I mean, I'll give it a try. I don't know. Like, I'm a filthy atheist, so I don't know how I'm going to feel about a show about the afterlife. And but when I really started getting into the nitty gritty of it, I was like, oh, I like this a lot. And so,
Yeah, it definitely has some Lost vibes to it, I'd say.
yeah, no,
just with the
100%.
just with the way the show, because isn't it, spoilers, isn't it, turns out like God doesn't want anyone to get into heaven or something? I don't, I watched through season 3 and then get to season 4 because Netflix didn't have it at the time. And
So if we're getting into like the major spoilery territory, pause, spoilers. It's a thing. Okay, moving forward. So like the whole thing is that there was never any adjustments made in like the formula for how like people got into the good place. So it wasn't that God didn't want anyone in the good place. It's that like back in the day, like let's just go biblical on it. Cain and Abel, murdering your brother. No, bad, not on the carpet. And like you go to hell for doing that. Whereas like now you buy a tomato from the grocery store, but that at some point down the road, some terrible business practice was done by some business to create said tomato, whether it be from like child labor or low wages or exploitation, what have you. And so you, as the consumer, bought a tomato that had some evil practice done to
and
create
you
it.
would you would have that get racked up on your sin
So
meters.
you would have that count against you as a strike. So just like grocery shopping was a thing that would like plummet your score to the floor in terms of like you being a good person. And so it was more that there wasn't any adjustment for like modern times or how a normal person lives. So it turns out that like a person hadn't been admitted into the good place in like 500 years or some shit. Like it had been like kind of an obscenely long time. And so when they become aware of that, because that becomes their new goal, is to figure out how the hell you're gonna like adjust that system. And that's like that particular twist is kind of one of the last ones in the show, really. Like
Hmm.
because the initial premise of the whole show is that like I believe Eleanor is her name.
Sounds right. It's been a while.
Is she is mistakenly in the good place, but no one else knows except for her partner. Is it Cheaty? Yeah.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Um, he's only made aware because she tells him that she's not the Eleanor that was supposed to be there. A different Eleanor is in the bad place while she's been put into the good place. And
And the
so,
good place is heaven, but it turns out that it's not actually heaven, it's a form of hell.
yeah, well, because yeah, that's like the first big twist is that Michael, the the curator of this town that is the good place, of which there are many, many, many good places of like
Played by Ted Danson.
clumps of people, I guess. Yeah, who does a fantastic job as that character, I'll say. Um, but like they become aware at some point that like Michael is not who he says who he is. And so like when
He's a
that
demon.
finally he's a demon, yeah, who is like his sole purpose was an experiment of like torturing everyone in these really mundane ways, but that would be more like psychologically scarring versus like physically scarring. Like all the people in the town that lived with them were supposedly people were just demons in disguise wearing skin suits to look like normal people, and they were only torturing 4 people out of this whole town of like 100 or whatever. There were a lot of people, and so that's like the first twist, and then it like just escalates from there to the point that we were talking about with like a person hasn't made it into heaven in a very long time.
Yeah, I definitely think there's some I kind of want to watch the final season now, but there's definitely some Gnostic vibes to that, which I
Mhm.
find really fun. Though I would kind of prefer the twist was that God didn't want people to get into heaven, because I find that definitely very Gnostic.
Mhm.
But I could also see certain elements of our
Mhm.
society not liking that twist, but that
Yeah.
makes me sort of want it even more.
Yeah, I
Just
mean, that
because
would be.
I like things being offensive sometimes, even though like I'm obviously a Christian, but I do like
Mhm.
the idea that it's that the main twist is that, that the person you thought was on your side isn't.
Yeah, like I think it's kind of a fair uh like I don't know, it's one of those things where when when a particular character or like idea is so played out that it any kind of variation on it is a nice fresh take. It's like God wants people to go to heaven, but you make a show where you're like, well, about that, and like that makes it very interesting, makes it so it's
Yeah.
not what you're expecting. That's something that I really liked about the Good Place is that they kept your expectations that they were changing constantly. I feel like.
Yeah, I think the tropes of sitcoms and just a lot of TV shows in general, of
Mhm.
that constant resetting each episode, definitely that has a certain Gnostic vibe to it,
Mhm.
which obviously the Good Place is playing on, but I think a lot of other shows kind of have mocked that idea a lot too. My
Mhm.
favorite show, well, at least my favorite comedy of all time, is Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and they
Mhm.
definitely mess with that idea as well.
Oh, for
The
sure.
show constantly resetting each episode, so
Mhm.
everything that happened in the previous episode just kind of goes away, like all the negative repercussions of it. And when they get into later seasons of Always Sunny, that there's a lot of stuff that comes back, but which
Mhm.
is partly why it's amazing. But yeah, just that whole resetting of the episode each time. Like I mentioned Supernatural, an old CW show that's been
Right.
off the air for a little while now, but that kind of that same thing that Hades has, where and House has, where there's a lot of running around and defeating monster of the week
Mhm.
in Supernatural's case, and then there's maybe like 10 to 5 minutes dedicated to brotherly tension and character growth of like the
Right.
season arc. Which watching those shows in like a marathon setting where you're watching a bunch at the same time can be kind of tiresome,
Sure.
just because you are way more invested in the ongoing story than you are with the sort of day-to-day life of the Winchester brothers of
Yeah.
defeating like whatever monster they're fighting this week. But yeah, and it a lot of TV shows, the prestige TV shows these days have gotten away from that constant
Mhm.
monster of the week sort of
Right.
especially on the streaming services on basic cable. I think you still have a lot of that. Not necessarily monster of the week, but sort of issue of the week that the characters need to resolve, like the crime dramas or the medical dramas or the or whatever is popular on base. What else we got? I know crime dramas are big, courtroom dramas.
Yeah, I feel like of the like kind of more trope heavy like I guess I'd say like cable shows, that those tropes, I feel like the one that really like made it through and has continued to thrive is the crime drama. Like I will say that, like, I don't know, like what spurred my watching House was more of like a survival thing than it was a like a desperate want to watch the show again. I refuse to pay the like $12 a month or whatever it is to watch YouTube without ads. And like I work from home for my job, and I like having stuff on in the background while I'm working. I have an ultra wide monitor that I use from home in addition to an additional screen. I also have a work laptop. So like the work laptop is kind of where I have like YouTube going on in the background. Something about the firewalls gotten kicked up to 11 recently though, and all the shit I normally watch on YouTube is now like blocked via the firewall. And so the stuff I'm used to watching that's kind of longer format stuff, that that 30 to 40 minute mark, has just gone out the window. So I was like, well, shit, I can't put on like however many 5 minute things to watch during the day. That's a huge waste of time. So I'm like, well, what can I watch? And then Amazon Prime is not blocked on this particular browser, so I'm able to throw on whatever show I want that's available through Prime, and House happened to be one of the options. That's kind of one of my like comfort shows, I guess is what I'd say. It's something I go back to and watch probably like once every year or two. And like, but that's just like put to the forefront of how funny like that some of those tropes are now, because in going back to the YouTube part, kind of where this idea spurred from, I've been seeing this ad constantly for this firefighter show that I guess is on the air right now. I don't know what it's called, but there's a crossover event happening with the firefighter show and like a medical drama that's happening. So like all the characters from this show are like coming together for some like mega episode or story arc or whatever. And if I'm not mistaken, I think one of the characters from the firefighter show was in House. So like there's this weird like cyclical thing happening in my life that way. But like just the commercial for this fucking mashup event just drives me nuts, because it's just like trope after trope after trope. Like there's a lot of people like running around aimlessly, like fire engines driving by for reasons. Like it's just,
Yeah. Have you ever heard that thing? It's you can tell how bad a movie's gonna.
Mhm.
Can you not hear me?
Oh, you're back.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is a thing where you can tell how bad a movie is going to be by how many helicopters are in the trailer.
Yeah, yes, that is exactly the vibe, except it's done by means of ambulances and fire engines.
Yeah. Whenever I go home to Montana and just hang out with my mom for a while, she every single day after work she watches General Hospital. And I don't know if you know what that is, but it's one of those daytime soap operas.
That's been on the air for a very long time now, right? Like,
yeah, it's one of the few surviving soap operas. I think that one and Days of Our Lives is still on.
But Days of Our Lives is still on the air.
Oh yeah, and apparently they're bringing back the whole. There's one of the. I remember when I was a kid, there's this blonde woman and she got possessed by a demon, and my mom's like, "Oh, I guess that arc is coming back or something."
That arc
I want to say her name is Marlene. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah. I just remember it. It's crazy, and those shows are so weird too.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just recast characters, never mention it again, and then the old character actor will decide to come back. So you'll have like an actor, they go away for a few months. Oh, they're back, and that they just pretend like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know how like they in their mind, like how people's minds, they just are like, okay, that's okay with me. But for
Mhm.
me, and since they have 5 episodes a week, just crazy crap is always happening. These people's lives are insane. I don't know how they.
I know, right? That's what I was thinking of. Like, I am exhausted if one annoying thing happens in my day that's like out of the ordinary. Like, if my day starts off with like, I can't find my shoes, the day's ruined already. Like, and like, I can only imagine what it's like for these people who are like, yeah, last week a helicopter crashed into the hospital.
Yeah, I found out that my comatose husband was actually alive and having an affair with my twin sister.
Right? Like that type of shit.
And then I have a
Like
child that was recently cast that I never actually had in the show, but now I have another child
these
that I'm
people are
raising.
living life a mile a minute. It's just like they have.
Yeah, but I mean, who am I to judge? Because a lot of the Marvel is exactly the same way, and obviously I'm into that.
Mhm.
It's just that soap opera stuff that hooks you. But yeah,
It's just funny
it's
that like because you're right, yeah, like with a lot of those shows, it's like nowadays I feel like we're kind of used to the notion of like you get one episode a week for like a new season, or maybe like one every 2 weeks or something like that. Some of those shows though, like they have thousands of episodes because there was like one new episode every day.
yeah. I remember there was one summer, and this is probably the craziest thing that's ever happened on General Hospital.
Hmm.
But James Franco decided he wanted to be on General Hospital, and this was at the peak of his stardom. And you can
Okay,
look it
so
up. Yeah, he actually joined General Hospital, and he was on it for a few months.
Mhm.
And he played, I think, one of the main characters, maybe a relative, but he was a serial killer.
Oh,
And
that's
so,
kind of cool though.
and his character on the show, it
Mhm.
was very creative. His name is on the show. This is him on the show. His name is Franco. That's the character's
Wow.
name on the show. And he's still on the show. He just was recast a long time ago. But I
Mhm.
don't know. And I think right now he's no longer a serial killer. He's now he's a good guy because he has a brain tumor or something. I don't know. That's the last thing I was watching of it. And I
Oh,
thought he
that's
was gonna
amazing.
die, but maybe he's not dead. I don't know.
That's
If my
fantastic.
mom was watching this, she'd probably be like, Nick, you watched it with me. Why wouldn't you know?
How do you not know that, right?
It's just
No,
insane. And James Franco was on General Hospital at the peak of his stardom, and
such
no
a
one knew.
weird, right? Yeah, like he just decided one day,
Yeah, I think
like,
he thought it's kind of a performance art sort of thing, like he would, you know.
I mean, I guess that is like, if you're looking for variety in terms of like being an actor, I can't say off the top of my head like a lot of actors who are very prominent now ever having that much time like on any soaps. You know what I mean? Like you have Clooney, he's still like fairly relevant in terms of acting, but
I don't
like
know if he was ever on a soap opera.
I mean,
I
I
don't think
think
so.
Grey's Anatomy is damn near a soap
You mean
at this.
ER?
Yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't consider it a soap opera, but
but regardless, like I feel like people they get scouted for having been in other things.
speaking of George Clooney, I
Hmm.
remember back in the day on Nick at Night, he was on. But he's on a sitcom. It was with the four girls in a boarding house,
He
and I
was
think one of the
on the Nick at
Tootie.
Night show.
Yeah, no, it was like his first one of his first acting career jobs, and he like shows up. He has this like huge perm. Man, I can't remember which show that was. It's not Growing Pains. I want to say Growing Pains. I don't think it is.
Did you by any chance ever watch any of the like
Facts of Life.
sci-fi
Facts of Life.
Facts of Life? There you go.
Yeah.
Do you ever watch any of the like sci-fi original like shows?
Oh yeah.
Because there were two that like I watched a lot of, and that was Eureka and Warehouse 13.
Okay. I didn't see any of those. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, like I think because both of those shows did the same thing, and
So
that like
Battlestar Galactica was a sci-fi original, and I did watch that.
yes, that's one that I've been kind of meaning because like that's a big missing credit in my like nerd background or resume is I like never watched Battlestar Galactica,
I should
but
rewatch it. I've forgotten so much, but
like it's funny that like Eureka and Warehouse 13 at one point they have like crossover episodes where characters from one come to the other back and forth. And so they're set in the same universe. So it was kind of like MCU vibes in terms of like what actors showed up where.
the sci-fi original cinematic universe.
Yeah, honestly, it was very much that vibe. Like I thought it was a really cool concept because Warehouse 13 was, you know, the focus of it was more of the supernatural side of things where like there's a seemingly infinite warehouse, like a very much like TARDIS situation of
Like
it
Raiders of the
looks
Lost Ark.
so yeah, like well, it looks so big from the outside, but on the inside it's much, much larger. And but it houses artifacts and things that were like the one that always comes to my mind is like in a box somewhere in this warehouse was like Harriet Tubman's thimble. And like the thimble had a property that was bestowed upon it by means of its time with Harriet Tubman. And it was that it could turn you invisible. So like that's how she like ferried people through the Underground
Like
Railroad.
the One Ring.
Yeah, honestly, I mean like a fair comparison. um but then like so that's like the supernatural side on Warehouse 13, and then Eureka was about like a whole town. It was very Bioshock in that like it was a whole town of like geniuses and scientists and like, you know, creative elitists that all like came in together in this one town to like to do science and to do experiments that would otherwise be kind of deemed like not okay by the general public, whether it be for like safety reasons or what have you. And so like Eureka focused very much on the sciencey side, and Warehouse 13 focused on the fantasy side. So having like the two intermingle together was such a cool coming together of like it was very MCU and like it happens. Honestly, I couldn't say when those crossover episodes happened, but I imagine it happened around the same time, if not earlier than like Avengers did. But this is a really cool concept. Like and that idea interests me a lot more than like, oh, you know, imagine a world where firefighters and doctors both exist, and so they like they had their crossover episode. Is that imagining happening? It's like my mind's blown. I can't imagine that world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not the target audience for that, so
Mhm.
I can't. It's hard for. It's easy to judge, but it shouldn't be something that I would judge someone on because there's different people that have different interests. Like there's like I mentioned earlier, there's a guy I hang out with. We usually get dinner together at Applebee's,
Mhm.
and he really likes war dramas. And I'm
Yeah,
not against war dramas. It's just not something that I naturally gravitate towards. I'm
sure.
definitely more of a sci-fi fantasy person,
Mhm.
and I like that kind of. And horror, horror is one of my favorite
Mhm.
genres too.
Oh yeah, no, I don't mean to come off as sounding as judgy.
No,
It's
yeah,
more
you're
funny
not.
to me
You're
more
not.
than
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
because like my wife, like that was something that her and her mom did when she was growing up, is like they watched soap operas. Like that was their thing they did together was watch soaps.
Yeah.
And like wasn't my thing really like to watch soap operas, but I also grew up in a house where like I was very in tune with like Gilmore Girls for like a long time. And like
Who in your
to
house
this
watched Gilmore Girls?
my both Katie and my mom watched
Okay.
Gilmore Girls religiously. That was
Oh
their thing.
man. I my mom was watching that when I was back to like they just made new episodes or something.
Yeah, they had like like a final season.
Yeah, and I just couldn't. I just didn't like it. It was
No,
too
I
much.
didn't. I didn't think this like the revamp. I have strong opinions on Gilmore Girls because I spent a lot of time exposed to that, and so I know about like a lot of the relationships that happened. Um, yeah, that final season was not very good, and that seems to be the general opinion, is that most people I don't think really liked it very much. Um,
I
it
like
was
how this is the avenue we're going down on this episode.
I know. Well, it's because, okay, do we want to get this out of the way? What if happened? That's a thing. Like we had the Thor episode and we had the Ultron episode. And so like
You
because I want
said
to get
you have a different opinion about the Thor episode than I did, though.
yeah, I just want to preface that we're getting back to Gilmore Girls by the end of this episode. So but like, okay, so we'll start chronologically. We'll start with the Thor episode. Yeah, I really like the Thor episode only because if the original Thor movie had a similar plot to what we saw in that Thor episode, I think I would have liked it a lot more than what originally happened in the MCU. Because Thor 1 is boring. It's boring. The characters are boring. Everyone sucks. I want to go back and rewatch it only for the sake of it's been a long time. I should like just for due diligence sake. But my memory of that movie is not one where I'm excited to go back and watch it. I'm thinking like, well, a nerdy responsibility of mine is to go back and rewatch films in the MCU because I record a fucking podcast about this shit. So I guess I should remember. That's why. Like, but like this episode with Thor, I thought was really fun because it made Captain Marvel more relevant much earlier than we are previously accustomed to, at least the MCU traditionally.
I think I. You can go on. I was going to make a comment about Captain Marvel on that episode, but you should go on. I'll follow up. I'll do a follow up.
But I just liked that we've had some heavy episodes, and so it was nice having an episode that was very just like on the nose, kind of silly. And I think everyone in the episode really enjoyed the like I called it out when it was happening. It wasn't that I like called it early, but like they had the like clean up after the party montage for the entire Earth. You know, when Thor's mom was coming home. You know, I thought that was so funny. Like every show that's catered to like middle and high schoolers has that episode of the show, right? Like, oh man, we want to throw a party this weekend. Let's do it. And oh, parents are coming home early. Quick, everyone grab a bag, and everyone starts cleaning, and like you clean the apartment or house up or whatever. And like by the time mom and dad walk in, you're like kicking the last aluminum can behind a guard or like behind into a closet. It's like, oh, mom, dad, you're home early. I was just studying. What are you doing home so early? And like,
Yeah,
it was like the exact same concept, except Marvel characters and like Thor as like a 1,000-year-old being. His mother's coming to scold him for partying. I just
yeah,
found that very funny.
yeah. This was the first episode where I kind of got to the point. This Thor episode in particular, where I got to the point where I just sort of stopped caring about this show. And I still haven't really pinpointed the reason why. I just think it has something to do with not having a bite. Everything seems too safe, and I feel like how many times can we experience the same events with these characters over and over again? Like I want to see something new.
Sure.
But I don't know. It's not that it's bad, it's just that I'm not interested. When you were talking about the party episode with and I just kind of popped into my mind, I'm like, well, there's a Rick and Morty episode like that too that's done extremely well and plays on the same theme of like, yeah, there's a party going on. And this isn't the first season, I think, of Rick and Morty, and Jerry and Beth, I think, are going to like some sort of Titanic like Ersatz Titanic redo over because Jerry's really obsessed with that movie. Anyway, but Rick is at home and like he throws the best party ever and invites like Bird Person and I think Squanchy is there or something.
Isn't that when we first see Aberdolf Linkler?
Yeah, and it's a really great episode. And that was that was, oh man, I didn't realize my plant is dying incredibly well. Um,
Mhm.
anyway, and I just it's kind of the same trope, and I don't think it was done particularly, like there wasn't really anything incredibly new there where it really changed my
Mhm.
opinion about any of the characters really, except for the one thing I did think of was Captain Marvel. And I know we talked about this before, but again, like what comic book girl 19 said, she's just kind of a no fun mommy. Like I,
Mhm.
I don't understand everything. She's always
Mhm.
just like a downer. You had like, I think her name's Darcy was there, and she was making jokes, and then
Mhm.
no fun mommy like just knocked her down a notch. And I'm like, just have a little fun, Captain Marvel. Like, why you always have to be like so stuck up about everything? It's like just have
So
some fun.
I will say I did watch that episode of Comic World 19.
Oh yeah, you did. Did you like it?
Um, so I'm not sure if I'm entirely sold on her style of
See,
video
I
yet.
think I think she's great.
Like I like things and I dislike things. And but like her opinion on the no fun Marvel mommies thing, I think is like my wife and I did agree, and we talked about this on the last episode, talking about how like Marvel has gone so far in the other direction in terms of like not sexualizing character like female characters in any kind of way that like it almost like would it feel weird to do that now? Like would a sexualized woman character be judged more harshly in some kind of way? Would the internet explode in anger if a character like that got introduced? I don't know. I think it would be appropriate because like the one I don't know why, but like I'm thinking in the future for MCU, right? And like X-Men, the X-Men are coming. That's happening at some point
Literally,
down the road.
because
Like,
there's so much sexy
oh,
stuff
and
going
that
on.
brings to point Emma Frost, right?
Well, dude, I
Like
was thinking of like straight up Mystique. In the X Men movies, there's a naked blue woman running around.
yeah, well, like I think of Emma Frost only because like her whole character is that like she's a very powerful psychic that like she uses her powers to like hide her real age or physique, and she like imprints on other people around her like what she wants them to see, which is this like bodacious blonde and like a fairly like skimpy white costume. Like that's her whole thing. And like I mean, she has the diamond skin thing, like we've seen that, but like a big part of her character is that like how she is perceived by other people. And like if they dumb down her like sex appeal, like that feels like kind of a disservice to the character in a way, because that's like a
well,
huge part of how she sees herself,
well,
much less how we see her.
I feel they already kind of did Lady Loki a disservice and not making her that way, because it just seems.
Mhm.
I just feel like a woman version of Loki would be like super sexual. I don't think she would be a no fun mommy.
See, I don't know. I'm on the fence about that point because I agree. I could 100% see a woman version of Loki, like using her feminine wiles to further her agenda, right? Like that completely plays into the character, at least in terms of like achieving goals, doing what they need to achieve goals. But on the other hand, like the Loki we know and love, like was there ever really much of an occasion where Loki ever was like a suave, like womanizer, like that he used his masculine wiles to like really win over anyone? Uh, I
Well,
feel like that's not a thing, right?
I
So
think in the first episode you see him board that airplane and he kind of flirts with the airplane attendant or flight attendant or whatever.
sure,
Um,
like
and I'm trying to
very.
think, going back, what do we got here? No, not in Thor 3, I don't think. Thor 2, I don't remember at all. Thor 1, also don't remember very well. He in the Avengers, no, but I don't know.
So like,
I'd have to rewatch. I'd have to rewatch him to be honest with
yeah,
you.
and
But yeah,
like,
in general, no, I don't think he really used his wiles that in that manner.
yeah, and so like, I feel like if we're gonna keep the characters like as more of a direct mirroring of each other, I think Loki, at least the version they present to us in the Loki television show, or Disney Plus show, whatever. I'm gonna call it television show, whatever. Um, but like the version of Loki they present to us is definitely um, much more socially awkward in that way. Like he doesn't like present himself in a like utterly masculine way or try and use his flirtatious abilities to attain his goals. He's just very mischievous and he's very smart and cunning in that way.
Okay, I'm vibing on what you're saying, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't mean to be this a takedown of the show Loki at all, but I will say that I don't really think Sylvie really. She did seem like a no fun mommy, and she didn't really seem like she was a trickster. She just seemed very focused on one thing. Like
Yes.
like she was almost a Terminator like character, where she wasn't going to stop no matter what. But I didn't really get a trickster character. And in Loki himself, I don't see him being against using flirting to get what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't really. I don't know. Lady Loki didn't really seem like she would want to do that. So I don't.
No, and I think that, well, and I think at the end of the day, like I will say that I think the Loki TV show I think was very good. I think it was fun. It wasn't very consistent with the rest of the MCU though, because I don't think the Loki that we're presented really is much of an indicator of the Loki we knew from the films.
He was
Very
definitely
different.
nerfed. I think he just
Yeah,
wasn't as
like
powerful as
wasn't
he
as
was in the.
powerful. Well, and I mean, I guess that stands to reason. He's in a world where he's like a lot of his time is spent in this the time variance authority and the TVA where like his powers essentially don't work. So he is just kind of a guy being a dude, you know,
Yeah,
in a lot of this show. So I guess that stands to reason. But
yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I don't. We don't have to make this about Loki. And then the episode, the next What If episode, where we have Ultron and Vision's body,
mhm.
basically waging war on the multiverse.
Yeah, or at least beginning his war on the multiverse.
Yeah, which I don't know if I liked or not. I
I
probably do,
mean, uh,
but I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like it only because, like, I think this kind of shows it's an interesting contrast to Thanos because, like, Thanos in the films was just this like ultimate be all end all bad guy, right? But when you compare him to Ultron with the power of the Infinity Stones, it's like it's not even a contest, right? Like Thanos's imagination in terms of what he could do with the Infinity Stones is so limited in scope by comparison to like what Ultron ultimately does, because Ultron achieves his goals like that and he does it the old fashioned way.
Well, that was going to be
He
my criticism actually, is because you
Mhm.
see Ultron basically waging war on the universe physically, like in our version of the Marvel universe, Thanos usually just like snaps his fingers. Like,
Mhm.
what's stopping Ultron from just snapping his fingers? And is it a lack of imagination on his part?
Mhm.
Maybe the having the Infinity Stones assembled is basically you can do anything you want. I mean, we literally saw Ultron biting a freaking galaxy. So,
Yeah, right. I mean, like, well, think about it this way. I mean, Thanos did not have to snap to achieve his goals. Why would he have to snap? Like, I think that's just like that's how he envisioned it. Is with this, I will achieve my goal. And so everyone's trying to stop him from snapping. But ultimately, if Thanos were a smarter motherfucker, he would have just been like, okay, it's done. Like,
Well, and that's
why does he
in
have to
that way,
snap?
it's kind of infuriating because if you remember the final battle in Endgame, he literally has the gloves on for quite a while. You know, like the only thing stopping him is snapping, but people keep on trying to grab it out of his hand. So I mean, is it he has to snap or what is up with that? You know,
Yeah,
and I
like I
guess
think.
that's my problem. I think ultimately with this episode, I just kind of feel like
Mhm.
it's just like it's this has so many weird things where I keep coming up in my mind everything that like the previous rules already established. Like this dog is just like drinking and scratching himself and looking at me all the time. I think it's
So,
hard. But it's I don't know. It's and I don't really like that he just lasered Thanos in two like that. To be honest with you, I kind of felt that undermined what we had already seen.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then he breaks through and attacks. What's his name? Owatu, I think his name is something like that.
I mean, the Watcher, more or
The
less, but
Watcher, yeah.
yeah.
Which is kind of it definitely was beautiful to watch, and I think this it was the most beautiful episode that they've put out so far.
Mhm.
Even the stuff with Black Widow and Hawkeye. And to be honest, I had issues with that story as well. Like, were we honestly supposed to believe that that analog guy from the Captain America movies would somehow be able to take down
Ultron.
Ultron with all the Infinity Stones? I just seemed kind of ridiculous. And even if he did,
Mhm.
like, what wants what? Why would we want that guy in charge of the Infinity Stones now? You know?
Right. Yeah,
So,
I think that part of the narrative certainly has flaws that I think are a little more egregious. But like I don't know, like I think it kind of paints this picture of the Watcher being this character who like he doesn't want to interfere at all, to the point that like his whole plan is to rely upon these literal just two people in a floppy disk to like complete their goals to save the universe. But like they're clearly in the MCU, there's like this threshold that like of power that if you pass that, you can perceive the Watcher from the space in which they watch. Because we've seen it once and it's shown pretty obviously at the end of the episode that like Doctor Strange, the version we saw, the dark Doctor Strange, I guess, or Doctor Strange, Ultimate Doctor Strange, whatever you want to call it.
yes, whatever.
But like that version of Strange was aware of the Watcher's presence, but only really became aware of him when it was a little too late to save his universe. And Ultron achieved a level of power to where he could perceive the place from where the Watcher was, watching all this going on.
Yeah.
So like I thought that was like a cool, mirroring of, because clearly that version of Doctor Strange could like go toe to toe with Ultron, right? He has that much power.
Yeah, I wonder if it could end with potentially that Doctor Strange absorbing Ultron,
Mhm.
the evil Ultron. Um, anyway, yeah, I did kind of agree with the criticism that Ultron had against the Watcher, where he's like, "Well, you're just sitting there watching. It's kind of creepy, man." It's like imagine it's like, "Oh, this is
Yeah,
where
no, like I don't know.
Black Panther was conceived on this night, on this full moon night where T'Challa's parents made love." He's got like the Watcher with like a little like, and this is where it happened. What if?
This is where it happened. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think, I mean, Marvel has been delightfully vague in the powers of most of their characters.
Delightfully.
Yeah, like I say delightfully because like it's kind of cute. It's like, oh, we don't know. What can they do? Like, like, hmm. because like you have a few outliers, like you have Tony, rip, but like he's, as he described himself, he's a man in a can. He's like a dude who uses technology to achieve his goals. Like that's his whole thing. Whereas like Captain Marvel, what the fuck can she do? Apparently, she can plunge a Infinity Stone powered Ultron into the core of a planet and like punch him to the point of like near victory, but then ultimately lose. Like even being able to just try that as an idea is like a power level way above like Hulk, right? Hulk mad, Hulk smash, but like Hulk got bitch slapped by Thanos with two or three Infinity Stones in his possession. Like,
Yeah.
so like the level of power between different characters is so inconsistent. So like you mentioned earlier, like Ultron just ultimately like just slashing Thanos in half with a laser, just not even
Yeah.
thinking about it, is like, really? Like I'm pretty sure Iron Man has some pretty fucking powerful lasers and he wasn't able to do that.
I mean, I think he had the Mind Stone at that point, but I don't know. That is, Ultron had the Mind Stone. Maybe it could go through his skin. I don't know.
Hmm.
I just seemed kind of, it's like something. Oh, it needed to happen for the plot, and so it's really fast.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's exactly why it happened that way.
But I do think over like my favorite part about this episode, and I definitely liked it quite a bit after I first watched it. But I think as time's gone on, I sort of soured on it a little bit.
Hmm.
Was I think it definitely did Ultron justice, even though it wasn't voiced by uh Kevin. Man, now I'm drawing a blank on his name. They didn't get the same guy that voiced him from Age of Ultron, but
Hmm.
I think they did Ultron's character justice. Like I feel like he's an actual character now versus when I just saw his movie. I think
Sure.
they did good job fleshing out his character to
Hmm.
make him seem like the big bad that he was.
No, I would agree. Yeah, like I think because I mean, he seemed like a very formidable bad guy in Age of Ultron. Um, but I think that the way he was written, and especially the way he was taken out, definitely seemed like to kind of undersell how strong of a villain he was.
James Spader, just so we know, be clear.
James Spader.
Robert California.
Yeah, like Robert Count, that's right. Yeah, like it but I would agree. Like I think this episode of What If did do a good job of like really fleshing out how, given the right circumstances, that like Ultron could be in a like incredibly dangerous threat to have to deal with, to the point that now we've gotten to a point where like the Watcher couldn't deal with him on his own, and so now he needs um to enlist the help of other people to help him. I will say though that I don't know about like the kind of interactions that happen like with the TVA or the Watcher, like that in between space, like what's going on there. There hasn't been any mention of the TVA in What If that I'm aware of, but it seems a little weird to me that in the TVA, the Infinity Stones are paperweights. They are ultimately useless. But in the in between space where the Watcher lives, like an all powerful being who, you know, like observes the passing of time and events in multiple universes and has enough power to take on an individual with the Infinity Stones at full strength, that the Infinity Stones work in that space seems like kind of an inconsistency for me. Like, surely the middle areas in between the universes kind of works the same way as the TVA, right? Like, why does it work? Why do they work there and not where the TVA lives?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. That's something I can kind of weirdly overlook, though, for whatever reason. I have a
Mhm,
easier time with that than some of the other inconsistencies in the
mhm.
episode because I don't really think it takes away from anything. But apparently, in the comics, the Infinity Stones will only work in the universe they're from. So
Sure.
if you were to take Infinity Stones from one universe into another multiverse, or like
Mhm.
it wouldn't work there, I guess.
Right.
So the show is I guess the MCU is different, and I think there was some confusion with that as well. But it's whatever for me.
Yeah. It's not a huge hang up for me, but it
Yeah,
does bother me a little bit that, like, I don't know, it seems like kind of an oversight that, because I think it makes sense that if you were to take an infinity stone from one universe and move it to another, that like the interloper, the visitor infinity stone wouldn't work because there's already an infinity stone that occupies that space of power
yeah,
in the universe it's entering. So like, I don't know.
yeah. I'm
Uh,
feeling this show in general. I'm kind of I don't know. I'm just kind of feeling it's definitely I think the my least favorite of the show so far, which is kind of weird to say, but I think that's true.
I think, I mean, what if stands way further ahead for me in terms of entertainment, above Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I would say. Um, I think they've I think they've done a cool job of like exploring these universes and these characters and the types of things that would be possible. I don't think they've done a very good job of like really pushing the boundaries on what could be done. And I think that's more just to like keep things, PG
But
13 or lower.
I think there's also something where Kevin Feige made it so that they in general they can't include characters that haven't been in the movies yet. So they couldn't, let's say, make an X-Men episode or
Sure.
feature, I don't know, some villain that hasn't shown up yet. Like
I
they can't
mean,
have Doctor Doom in there or something like that.
I think that's a fair limitation, to be fair. But I was telling my wife this the other day, that I don't like when I can watch a show and make judgments about what's going to happen before it happens because of like business baseball that's happening in the real world. You know what I mean? Like, I remember at some point in the MCU, there was this big hullabaloo about like the contracts for like Mark Ruffalo and Chris Hemsworth and like one other Avenger were like up in the air, like they hadn't been renewed yet or something. This happened years ago, and like there was a lot of tabloid bullshit news going on of like, oh, what's gonna happen? Like, oh, sweet Jesus, they talk, is Thor not gonna be in the MCU anymore? And it's like, a fucking course they're gonna keep these characters. Like what kind of idiot company would Disney and Marvel be to walk away from characters like this who are like part of this billion-dollar franchise at this
Yeah.
juncture? Like,
I mean, I get what you're saying. It does kind of seem like What If is like just checking another box off some sort of corporate checklist.
mhm,
It's not really exciting necessarily. Like I kind of feel like What If stories should inherently be sort of exciting,
mhm,
but I don't really know if they are. I think if I was going to make a choice on how they would have gone with a show like this, would be extremely creator driven. I think it would have been
yeah,
cool to get a huge or a group of creators that don't usually have access to these characters and be like, go hog wild with this crap, guys. Like have a fun and do something crazy that we can't really do usually. But you keep it within the bounds of Disney. But I think that would have been
mhm,
fun to see something like that versus this sort of like versus what we got. Because like the what if, I feel like the questions they ask are not even questions I would even think about. Like be like, oh, what if? Like what if Loki was not taken in as a child? Oh my god! Like what would have happened? Like that.
mhm,
It's not like it's gonna. It's like they wanted to do something. Like oh, we'll
mhm,
have this episode, and here's how we're gonna justify it. It's more like they wanted to justify an episode before they ask the question. And so the
Yeah,
question is more like just some sort of name they came up with after they made the episode.
sure. Kind of
Um,
more of like a dartboard of let's all these characters are on the dartboard and we're going to throw two darts and we're going to see what two characters match up and build a story around that versus
yeah.
yeah
I will
I
say I did watch the new Star Wars Lego special, like the Terrifying Tales, yesterday when it came up on Disney Plus.
yeah
And they actually have a few what if Star Wars stories in that I thought were not universally great, but kind of interesting. Because they had like one where Luke was found by Darth Vader first. And
Ooh,
the thing that I found most interesting, and this is filtered through the lens of like Lego comedy, right? But
sure.
General Kenobi was in one of the X-wings going down to the Death Star, because
Oh,
obviously
that's interesting.
he didn't die
Right.
when he saved Luke.
So old Obi-Wan comes to actually the Death Star run.
Yeah. And they actually had some pretty cool lore stuff in there too with Kylo Ren. I
Mhm,
don't know if they're going to build off that in future stuff, like in the actual canon, but I thought they did a good job with that.
mhm,
Kind of who the Knights of Ren are and stuff. So I hope
sure.
they build off that. At any rate, back onto what if, like, I don't mean to bash the show. I just am kind of lost a little bit of interest, and
Mhm,
it's not the same as a live action show for me, for sure. And we haven't talked about it at all. We won't talk about it today, but Star Wars Visions I thought was pretty great. There's a few episodes in there I thought were really good that they should actually make into whole series.
sure.
But I don't know about like I like this anthology stuff, but sometimes it does kind of just seem like it's just an easy way to make animation without having to invest a lot of actual time into making the story like an ongoing story throughout the season.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think we're like they're only able to use characters that have been established yet and or that have been established. And so I understand that limitation, but like we were talking about, it does ultimately make it a little boring because on a show, what if you want every possibility of what if X happened? And when limitations get put on the what if question, it takes the air out of the out of the balloon, so to speak. It's like man, it would be really cool if nope, you can't use any of the X-Men or any characters who haven't been seen yet, Doctor Doom, anything like that, anything fun or interesting, nope, sorry. It's like you're stuck to just the Infinity Saga stuff.
Yeah, which is something we already lived through, and I'm had a good time watching it, but at the same time, I'm ready to kind of move on to new things.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I don't disagree. I think the show's been fun to watch, but yeah, I think the limitations of the show are starting to show a little bit now.
well, I'm hoping in the next season they can do some crazier things. So,
Mhm.
I know you're gonna have to go soon, so I thought we could finish up with a few things because this popped into my mind too.
Sure.
The new Venom movie came out this Thursday, I think. There is an
Ah,
end credit
yes.
scene in that. I don't know if you've heard about that, but
No.
I don't know if you want to hear about that or if you want to be surprised.
I mean, I would like to be surprised only because I think it would be cool to see that. But
Okay, okay, I really don't, but it'd be really fun to talk about because I think
see,
it's
but
gonna.
I got 10 minutes though. I don't want to get into a long discussion.
Okay,
But I want to be able to see it because I don't have high hopes for this movie at all, but I do
it's
want to
gotten
see
pretty
it.
mixed reviews, and from what I understand, the best part is that is the end credit scene because what it sets up for the future. Um,
Mm.
and of course, I spoil myself. That's what I do. It's inherently who I am.
So
Um,
I'll ask you this one question, and then we'll probably end the episode
oh, I didn't
here.
want to also. I wanted to, if you
Mhm.
want to talk about the Gilmore
Yeah.
Girls because you did
Uh,
promise.
I do want to come back to Gilmore Girls, but we might have to wait to another episode.
Okay.
I have dogs at the daycare I need to go pick
Okay.
up. But the question I would ask is it just a yes or no answer. So, Venom involvement in the Spider Verse, yes or no?
When you say the Spider Verse, do you mean like the MCU, or do you
Not
mean like?
necessarily the MCU, just overall. Is Venom going to be entering into some kind of relationship with the rest of Spider-Man in some more meaningful way? And
Yes.
is that okay? That's all I want to ask, because that's kind of where I feel like they're headed. But that's really cool, and I look forward to talking about it when I see the movie.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to see it for a long time, but I know that I know what the end, what the end credit is. So
But with
I'm not
that,
really that interested in seeing it, to be honest with you. I'm like not.
no, I'm only gonna watch it because literally because of the end credit scene and what it might ultimately mean for the rest of the movies, because the Venom movies have been trash. They're just so bad. But that's because Sony can't make a superhero movie, apparently. Um, Anywho, uh, that will probably wrap it up for this episode of the Nerds of the North podcast. Nick, do you have any more closing thoughts, or?
About just life in general. Oh, it's just good to sit here and talk to you, Matt. Like I'm thinking that hairstyles, rocking my world today. I hope you get out there and experience the fall weather, and your dogs have had a great time roughhousing with the other dogs. So that's what I got.
I'm sure they have. They're probably going to be very wet when they come home, and I'm going to have to deal with that. But it'll be like
is there like a swimming pool there or something for dogs?
They have access to a bunch of water, and Ramona loves swimming, and so
okay,
yeah, so she's going to be absolutely covered in water.
Yeah, this dog I can tell is like begging me. He wants to get fed, so I should probably leave it.
But thank you everyone for watching.
Nat,
I hope you enjoyed.
Do you have any closing thoughts? You asked me. What were your closing thoughts?
I really hope that Venom isn't complete trash, and I hope What If ends in a way that's like fun versus predictable. That's what I would say. And okay. I hope you get to have some badass earrings outside of the bog standard ones you got in now. But
we'll see in 2 months.
Yeah. But with that, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Smell you later.